I once had a mom in hard labor say, "Ugh, is it time to go to the hospital yet?" And her partner said, "No, your contractions aren't 5 minutes apart yet. They're only 2 minutes apart." Do you know why that was a bit of an oops? Let's talk contraction timing.
Hi, I'm Melissa Evans.
And I'm Ellen Contard. We've been supporting growing families for a really long time.
But we're not old.
And we've discovered that it's really hard for today's families to fit in quality childbirth education, both in terms of time and budget.
So we decided to do something revolutionary. We're taking our comprehensive birth, pregnancy, baby care, and breastfeeding classes and offering them right here for free.
Please understand that we are not medical providers or attorneys. We do not practice medicine nor the law.
So please use common sense and talk things over with a professional that you trust.
But for now, let's discuss not only how, but when and why we would time contractions during labor.
There are actually 3 characteristics of contractions that we pay attention to: their duration, their frequency, and their intensity. The former 2 we can measure with a clock. Intensity, on the other hand, we rely on what mom says she's experiencing and just watching how she is handling these contractions.
To measure the frequency of the contractions, we measure the time between the start of the first contraction and the start of the next contraction. So even though we say contractions are 5 minutes apart, that doesn't mean that we're actually getting 5 minutes of rest between the contractions. In reality, we're probably only getting about a 4-minute break because contraction number 2 started about 5 minutes after contraction number 1. Think back to your high school trigonometry class, the concept of frequency, the start of one cycle to the start of the next cycle.
Contractions will often start more spaced out in the beginning, say 10 to even 20 minutes apart. And then as labor progresses and birth becomes closer, they can get as close as 2 minutes apart. So if a mom's contractions are 2 minutes apart, she's already past that 5-minute mark.
The duration, or how long the contractions last, is pretty intuitive. It's just the time from the beginning of a contraction to the end of the contraction. In early labor, contractions can be as short as 30 seconds, and as labor progresses, they grow to 60 or even 90 seconds long.
As labor progresses, the intensity will also increase. This increase in intensity, the shortening of frequency, and the lengthening of duration is the official definition of labor progress. Be sure to watch our episode, What Hollywood Didn't Teach You About Labor, to really grasp the whole picture.
What does it look like to actually time contractions? Well, these days, there's an app for that. There are lots of contraction timing apps out there. Some are paid, some are free. In most of them, you click a button when the contraction starts and again when it ends, and it magically calculates all the stats for you. If you don't have access to an app or you don't want to drain your phone battery or some other thing that happens, then you can just use an old-fashioned paper and pencil along with a watch or a clock that marks seconds. The most convenient way is to use 2 columns. In the first column, write the start time of the contraction. In the second column, write the end time of the contraction. Subtracting across will give you the duration of the contractions, while subtracting down in the start time column will give you the frequency of the contractions.
I have to admit, as a doula, I hate timing contractions. And the nurse comes in and looks at me like I'm supposed to know, and I've been watching my client, not the darn clock. So here's a little trick to get around this. Simply tally. Count for about an hour in early labor, maybe 15 minutes in more active labor, and see how many contractions happen in that period of time. If there are 5 contractions in about 15 minutes, you know they're about 3 minutes apart. An approximate really is good enough.
When is it useful to time contractions? Well, the great news about contractions is that they happen and even produce a baby, whether we're timing them or not. We certainly don't need to time every single contraction. We just need to time enough of them to show us a pattern that will give us some insight as to where we are in the labor process. Generally, just timing a handful is enough to show us that pattern, or a lack of pattern, and that's also useful information. That could be telling us that maybe this isn't baby producing labor yet, or maybe we're still really early, or maybe baby is in a position that could make labor longer and less comfortable, and we should do something about that.
In general, it's a good idea to time contractions in the beginning because this could kind of give us an idea of the route that we'll be taking. If contractions are really far apart and relatively mild and not lasting very long, that might indicate we'll be doing this for a while. And then we know it's really important for mom to eat and drink and rest to sustain her energy. Whereas if contractions start 3 minutes apart, hot and heavy, we might have a speedster on our hands. And you want to prepare for that eventuality as well.
Timing contractions can give us good data for when mom wants to make a decision. If she's thinking about changing her activity level or moving to her birthplace or accepting some kind of intervention, those are all great times to get this data. Also, if mom wants to sleep during the contractions, this is a wonderful advantage. If a partner's watching and knows it's been about 4 minutes and a contraction is probably coming on, they can start to gently comfort mom. And it's so much better to come conscious to those positive sensations than to wake bolt upright in the peak of a contraction, intensely uncomfortable.
One other really cool thing about contractions is that the peak is at 30 seconds. And this doesn't matter if the contraction is lasting 60 seconds or 90. Once mom hits that 30-second mark, it's not going to get any worse. This can be a really comforting thing for her to hear in the middle of labor. You're 30 seconds in. You have mastered this contraction. It is all downhill from here.
We suggest that you practice timing some contractions to see how this feels. Moms, what does a minute feel like when you're really focusing on that relaxation? Partners, how much talking does it take to fill up that minute? Getting a feel for these things, as well as that magical 30-second mark, is great practice for the big day.
So what did you think? Did you have any light bulb moments? Let us know in the comments. We love to hear your stories.
Please like and share this video with all your pregnant friends. And do remember to subscribe. We'll be posting new videos every week, and we don't want you to miss out.
Until next time.
Know your options.